Gary,
Hey, Rob. How
how's
are you, my friend?
very good, very good. We've just been on the Ascension Experience coaching call, which was very good. Good to hear all the things you said. It's pretty interesting, isn't it, when you start to interpret things that you might have thought of as negative in your life, and then you realize actually they weren't negative. Somebody might have thought they were, but it turns out they weren't. And I was thinking about my father. I guess he always thought I was impetuous and that it would rush in and do things. And he used to say in the most scathing tone about the way I would do things, he would say, "Oh, quickest, easiest method." And I was talking to like an entrepreneur coach one day, and she said, "I would have thought that was a pretty good attribute for an entrepreneur." And I was like, yeah, that's true." And then one day, one of my step grandsons said to me, "Why do you tie your shoelaces so fast?" And um, and I can't remember what I said to him, but the reason I tie my shoelaces fast is because it's not really a key part of my day. It's not it's not the purpose of my day. It's something to do so I can get my shoes working and so I can go somewhere. And there is that whole concept of being mindful about everything. And I suppose if there was a lesson for me in doing things quickly or being impatient or impetuous, it's some things you can enjoy doing. I could actually be mindful about tying my shoelaces. I could probably be more mindful about eating and drinking as well. And in fact, I was talking with Krista, who you may know, and she has a course that she's made around, I think she's calling it Drinking Without Fear. So it's about how to consume alcohol from the point of view of an ex-alcoholic without the fear around the 12 steps method. So it's pretty profound work. So we've been helping her put that online. So I've learned a lot about it. And one of the things I noticed is that she suggests that people, if they're going to have a drink of alcohol, be very mindful about it. Like instead of just grabbing it and chucking it down to get the hit or whatever is the motivation, she talks about being mindful about the drink. Like, what are you drinking? What is it made from? Where was it made? Think about who might have made it for you, how it got there, what's in it, what's it going to taste like, and actually enjoying it. And I thought, yeah, sometimes, especially on a hot day, I grab a beer and it tastes so good. It's like you chuck back that first beer and then the second beer looks pretty good. And I thought, I do enjoy it, but imagine if I did it more mindfully. And the same with eating, like it's so easy to shovel down the food instead of enjoying every mouthful. So that was my mindful observation for the day.
This whole aspect that we talked about today, it was pretty powerful, understanding that all the negative aspects you have about yourself, all your self-criticisms, actually came from other people, right? That you didn't, Rob Turner didn't wake up today and go, "I can't do X," whatever that may be, right? Jerry Maslin didn't wake up today and say, "I can't do X," without somebody putting that in our head. Because left to my own devices, I think I can do anything. It's not until someone looks at it and goes, "That's terrible." And you go, "Oh, is it?" Right? And for me, especially with my kids, young females, teenage females in America, in the world today, when it comes to social media, you realize, and my youngest daughter is struggling with lots of self-criticism. And I asked her this weekend, I said, "Well, where did this come from? Nobody I know has ever said these things, to you. Or, I mean, why are you thinking about these things?" And everything she mentioned was either somebody comment on social media or somebody had made to her, and that she began to believe about herself. So the interesting part is we have comments coming at us all day, right? And if our reality is a constant living feedback loop, why do we choose to take certain of those negative aspects on as our personality and believe them? And why do we let others go? Like, that to me is super interesting. Like, why did I just take on the ones about being loud, pushy, passionate as a negative, right? That you rub people the wrong way because you push through without taking the patience. Like, why did I choose that? Out of all the other things that people have said, I've literally lived my life with those as at the forefront?
I think part of it is for a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people talk about this, so I think it's not just my own experience that, and Joshua actually talks about it as well, that when we're kids, when we're pretty young, our parents use a form of control which is around, I will accept and love you and you're part of the family, the team, if you behave in the following way. But if you do this other stuff, then, and I felt very much that my parents' love was conditional. And I think it is an early form of control. And I suppose the extreme version of that form of control, why it's in our society, could be because when we were, for example, hunter-gatherers, which we were for most of our evolution, most of our time as a species, then if you were cast out of the group for doing something unacceptable, like I know in anthropology, social anthropology, they call it ostracism. So ostracism in that regard is you're out of the group, you're no longer part of us. Well, that was pretty much a death sentence. So, and I suppose even if you were in an early agricultural, horticultural village when we started to learn to plant stuff and raise animals and we were no longer nomadic hunter-gatherers, it was probably the same thing, that if you were cast out of the village, there was going to be a hard life or possibly a death sentence as well, because you no longer had access to food and shelter and so on. So my point is that ostracizing somebody as a means of social control has probably carried on, maybe less so with more enlightened parenting now, because using shame and we won't love you if you behave the following way, and oh, you're such a good boy, and then you feel the warm glow of your mother's love and all that sort of stuff. So I wonder if that's where some of that actually arose.
That's really interesting. It's such an enlightening aspect to realize that any limiting belief I have, or any negative aspect, is really just repeating what somebody else, in my own mind, repeating what somebody else has actually said to me. That I didn't come up with these on my own. I wasn't born thinking X, Y, or Z. It wasn't until someone put that idea in your mind, and then there was, to your point, which makes perfect sense, there was a consequence, right? Whatever that, because if you don't stop doing that, then X is going to happen. And it probably was, as I look back now, probably was during my childhood, where the more aggressive you could be as a kid, as we know, that's not what parents want, right? They want you to be calm and quiet and sit in the corner. So that's interesting. But yeah, that to me was a huge sort of just eye-opening. It may sound simple to other people, but for me, to realize that when you list all your negative aspects, and then you realize that you can almost identify the person that actually said those things to you, and then you've now adopted them and be like, this is who I am. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah, you can identify that person typically. Yeah, just for the sake of so people know what we're talking about, the exercise was, first of all, to write, there was essentially a blank page, about your personality, all the positive aspects of your personality. The second exercise was to write all of the negative aspects of your personality. And the third part was about your body, all of the positive aspects about your body, and then negative aspects about your body, and then early life, positive aspects. I haven't done that part yet, early life, negative aspects. And then once you've done all of that, is to take each one of those negative aspects, for example, that's got like 4 negative aspects of your personality, and then restate it as a positive aspect. How is this actually beneficial and perfect? So that is an extraordinarily good exercise, isn't it?
Like I said, I think this oneness course has really been, maybe just because I went in with no expectations, right? It's really been very, very powerful in terms of the perspective that it's sort of teaching you and teaching us, that even the positives, when you list all the positives, you look back and you see people said those things to you too, right? So it's a combination where the positive aspects and the negative aspects aren't really our own. It's just things that are accepted by society or the people you're around, and things that aren't accepted about the society, which to me it completely changes the relevance or the weight of it. Now it's more about, what do I like to do, and I like to do this. Am I good at it? And I no longer know if I'm good at it. I just like to do it.
So if you think about who your authentic self is, who your real self is, like who you truly, truly are. And if I give an example, like I knew when I got into finance when I was in my early to mid 20s, I knew that I was abandoning my previous self who studied done an arts degree. And when I was at university, I had long hair and motorbike and all that sort of stuff. And I was interested in poetry and literature and art. And I knew that that sensitive, well, creative, whatever you want to call that, impractical, how do you make a living out of that? So
that's like a famous line, right? Every parent says to the kids, how you earn a living, right? I mean, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. And the world says that stuff. So anyway, I realized at the time that I was in language I didn't have then, that I was dumping my authentic self to adopt a persona where I had an opportunity to make a lot of money and people thought I was amazing. Well, they thought I was amazing and so on. So what I'm just trying to define what is your authentic self as opposed to an adopted persona of traits. And then the question is, well, who besides you knows your authentic self and who you truly are? And the answer is possibly nobody does. So therefore, all of the praise you get for various things is in a way as useful or useless as all the stuff that you got as criticisms of you, because these people don't know you anyway, right? So if people like and appreciate you for various things, in a way that's not that helpful.
It's pretty powerful. What you just said there was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's not that helpful because, well, that's not who I am either. Like, I'm not that negative thing. And sure, I get the warm glow when you tell me something nice about myself. You're so good at sales, or,
right. But it's just as valuable, to be honest. It's just, and you said it's just as valuable as a negative. It's not who you are. It's not your authentic self.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we give that positive weight, right? Or we give that negative weight, whatever we choose, right? To give more weight. I hadn't even thought of that. That's really big.
So when I was, I've been working on making this course, which Jessica and Ondine gave me the idea, which was about a new approach to money. Initially, it was called How to Make Money Authentically, but I'll probably call it a new approach to money. And with that idea, hold on, something crazy going on outside here. Just excuse me a second. I lost my train of thought. So, I was looking at this finance thread on Reddit, and this guy was basically saying, am I meant to enjoy this? Like, does anybody actually enjoy this kind of work or not? And so there was all these amazing responses in there. Like, it was fascinating to read. Most of them were around, no, it sucks, or I hate it, or it's boring, or it looked interesting at college, but it's not. And I do it for the money. I do it for my family. I do it for security. And then one guy said, the work is really boring. It's not what I wanted to do. I like my colleagues, though, when we, on a Friday night, we go to a bar and, talk about Netflix and sport. And that's what I would rather be doing. That's what I really like, is I like talking about Netflix and sport and good restaurants and bars. And I thought, well, it's pretty good, young fellow, that you have this interest and this passion in Netflix and sports on TV and restaurants and bars. But I thought, so your day-by-day life is a job you don't like. You quite like the people you work with, especially when you go to the pub, and your true passions that you've discovered so far amount to restaurants, bars, Netflix, and TV sports. And I thought, okay, it's meaningful to you, which is nice, but it's hardly a deep and satisfying, authentic life.
So and to be honest, I kind of feel the same way those Reddit responses were most of the time, right? I do it for the money, right? What are you doing for the money? And then I try to convince myself, well, I'm good at it and I have fun doing this. That's super powerful. I mean, I lived that Reddit, feedback for 25 years in New York City. I hated going to work. I would actually feel like I was going to throw up every time I would head into work. and it was my own company. But when people say, like, even when you talk about manifesting, right? You manifest a desire, but you have to manifest what your truest desire is. And a lot of times I ask that question, what is my truest desire? Like, what is the formula to find out what is my truest, right? What is the thing that really means the most to me? So let's just say, like Jessica said today, right? You want $1 million in the bank, but like, what do you really want? Right? And how do you, in today's society, how do you put money second when money's first in everything we do in our society?
Yes, so it is a leap of faith concept, and you may have seen that image that Ondine put in the Facebook group where the person, let's say it's you or me, is standing on the top of a cliff and the universe is standing there, about to flick this person off into the void. And so the hand with the flick finger says the universe, and then the little person is you. And then there's some hands below to catch you, and it says also the universe. So jumping into the void, jumping out of the plane without a parachute, perhaps is an extreme comparison. To actually trust in that process is not something that I've found easy to do overnight. So it's a matter of following your inspirations rather than your fears and your urges. And it's a matter of, it's not that I'm not doing the day-by-day work that I was doing before. It's not like I've abandoned that and waiting for, manna to rain down from heaven or something. It's not like I'm waiting for the miraculous arrival of, a shower of money just because I've given up worrying about it. It's actually that, first of all, I'm trying to do what I do every day from a point of view of inspiration and love. And if something seemed like a chore or something I had to do, like some work for, say, a client, for example, and I was annoyed that I had to do it or didn't feel like doing it, then I would think, well, how do I feel about this person? Do I want to work with them, and how can I help them? And what am I doing here? So I tried to reframe the entire thing instead of have to do, well, in what way can I choose to be doing this, and think about that person and think about the higher perspective and all that kind of stuff. So I managed to reframe it. But what I found when I started doing that was I attracted more and more clients who I really wanted to work with. I stopped attracting clients I didn't like working with. And so the work itself became far more interesting. And also it's become more remunerative. So I have actually started taking that approach, but it is scary because it feels like you're letting go of the kind of control approach of have to do this, have to do that to make a living. And I mean, the idea was expressed today in the notes that we were reading in that coaching call. And the idea was, well, if you act on inspiration and follow your true desires, whatever they may be, and it's not just a single desire, it's all of your true desires, then all of the things you need, the money, the house, the car, or whatever, your 401k, your retirement fund, whatever, all of that will arrive to the extent that it is required. And it's really when you focus on, I really need some more money in my retirement fund, or I really need a house or a different house or a car or whatever it might be, debt-free, whatever, the more you focus on that, the more you're attracting the exploration of the lack of a thing. Whereas we actually want to let go of those things, know that they will come. And if I look back, I've always had enough of everything. So it's never actually failed me, even when my vibration was super wobbly. So I realize now that it's actually a matter of kind of letting go, but actually it's not that I'm not doing my work. It's just that I am doing it from a place of inspiration and love. And then I seem to be attracting a lot more of what I really want in my work. Yeah. So I feel like I'm really making progress on that now.
Yeah, I'm still in that. Yeah. I still don't know what I want to do. And every time I put myself into the situation I'm currently in, and I'm like, I like doing this. This is fun. I'm good at it. Yes, I'm good at it. And yes, some of the stuff is fun. But I really don't enjoy it. I mean, most of the time I look back and I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I put the time in. Was it a struggle? Not really. It just wasn't joyful. Right. And that's, for me, and I've been asking myself this question now for almost 10 years. Like, what do I want to do that's going to bring joy in my life, that I'm going to get up smiling, at that I'm going to do it, every single day. I schedule my day so that I get the stuff done, to your point, right? It's like, I'll reframe it and I'll do all that. Yeah. And I can play that game, to your point. But it's still playing a game, because the actions I'm taking are not the actions that are bringing pure joy. How I'm reframing it is teaching me how to look at the world and how to look at my reality in a more in a way that's more in alignment, which there's no anger, there's no outbursts, there's so much less, right, of those manifestation events. But the actual work isn't putting a smile on my face. It's not making me sad like it used to, or making me angry, right? So there's an improvement there. And I think that's when you're doing something that you don't like. I shouldn't say don't like. When you're doing something that's not bringing you pure joy, right? And I think that's the point I'm on right now, is I'm doing something that I don't hate it. It's just not bringing me pure joy. It's interesting. And I'm using the knowledge and the awareness that we're getting to try to understand, what do I want to do and where do I want to go?
So the thing is that we may or may not know that. And what's shaping up for me in terms of where my work part is headed is not where I ever thought it would be headed. So what I'm saying is that by taking that approach of loving what I do and appreciating the clients who have trusted me to help them get where they want to get to, and giving me money for that, that exchange of energy. So by starting to actually enjoy that, I've attracted more of the sort of clients I want to work with, and not any of the others. And I stopped focusing on, I think I really want to make this online course or that online course, or I really want to be doing this, or I really want to be doing that. So I started doing the things that I was most inspired to do, and the rest is actually starting to take care of itself. So Joshua often says that essentially trust that the universe will unfold these things for you in the most unexpected and magnificent way. So by saying, I really want, what is it I really want? And I really need to know what it is that I really want. By saying that, you're kind of narrowing the options, but the alternative is, right, I'm going to be open to opportunities as they come. So am I making sense here? So instead of saying, I don't really like this, I'm trying to reframe it, and I wish I knew what I really wanted. And so that's still like fear and control, whereas the process really is to unconditionally love and accept the work you're doing, and it's a gift and an exchange of value and all that stuff, and then act on inspirations as they come, overcome the fears, and the other stuff starts rolling in. It is a process of letting go, taking the plunge, and it always comes back to me the image of jumping out of a plane without a parachute. But it's not quite that scary, and it's not quite that severe if it didn't work out. And it's not as if I've abandoned all the things that are making an income for me, but I have reframed them, and it does seem that I've attracted more of the stuff I enjoy, and I don't really attract any of the stuff I don't enjoy anymore.
Yeah, I guess I need to focus on that a little bit more. It's just the idea that there's so much more and out there, and you can sort of, like I said, I can reframe it where I'm not unhappy, but it's, is it, and I do see it as a gift, there's no question, but is it fulfilling? I mean, I've had lots of things in my life that were gifts that weren't fulfilling. So it's like that separation for me, right? It's and I remember having this conversation, 20 years ago with my sister, and she's like, I hate going to work. I'm like, I love going to work. I love what I'm doing. I remember that feeling of loving something I did. And I think the reasons I was doing it, right, were much different then than they are now. But it is, for me, no matter what I start to do, anything I try to do, I'm like, am I struggling and efforting? Am I forcing me down? Even when I reframe, am I forcing myself down a path that is different just because I know what I'm doing right now isn't the end? or isn't the most fulfilling. And does that end in an implosion? Because that's the biggest fear, is that you're learning all this knowledge and you're doing all this stuff. Now you're stepping outside of the illusion and you're questioning stuff, and then you put the illusion in jeopardy, but the illusion is the one paying the bills. So you do have to your point, jump out of the plane and have faith that once you step out of the illusion, right, step out of the struggle and effort and just go, okay, I'm gonna enjoy this and try to have fun, every way I can. It's a lot to take on. It's a lot and it is faith, to your point. It's trust.
Well, it's a bit of a process, and it's not as if you have to abandon the illusion that's paying you monthly nut and all that kind of thing. So I'm not suggesting that. It's a more subtle process, really. And I understand what you're saying. It's like, if the work you're doing really, really, really isn't you, and you're doing it for a whole bunch of historic reasons, and it's really hard to find satisfaction in it, I do understand that. But they also say that our current situation is a perfect reflection of our current vibration. And the way to do the work is to change your vibration, to change your outside circumstances, not to dump the job and hope for the best, because how you feel is reflected in your reality. So changing your reality won't change how you feel, because you created it by how you feel. And as we know, the way to raise your vibration is to be in alignment, which means you see things from the same perspective as your inner self. And the way we know we're in alignment at any moment is we feel good and we feel happy. So joyous moments, that's an alignment. And when we feel negative emotion, this is our emotional guidance system. And that system tells us, if you feel a negative emotion, that you're out of alignment, which means you're not seeing things the same way as your inner self. So we wobble in and out, of course, because even those people who are raising their vibration constantly still wobble in and out and have manifestation events where they discover a new limiting belief. But the more you can be in alignment, the more you'll raise your vibration, and the more your external reality will reflect something that is more akin to what you truly desire and is truly satisfying. So it is that part that you talked about, I think, initially, which is the reframing and understanding that your vibration is creating the current reality. And if you don't like that reality, get back to thinking about your vibration and the wobble in your alignment in the moment.
Yeah. And it's always questioning. You're quite, that self-doubt, well, is this right? What am I doing right now? But I think, to your point, it's just part of the process. It's that one step in that process. Continue to see where it takes you. I think that there's this idea, this concept of, sort of waking up in bliss and floating throughout the day in total alignment, bliss, where everything just comes to you. And that's not the reality, right? The reality.
So I'll tell you where that happens. It's in the non-physical.
Okay. Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen on planet Earth. So another part to it was in stuff we received this week, was around acting with confidence. So having an innate confidence that everything will work out fine. So like I say, it's not about dumping the illusion or dumping the 9 to 5 or whatever, but it is about having an innate confidence that things will really work out. And I may have mentioned this to you before, but over the years, I've noticed some profoundly Christian business people in action. And that's not my personal model, but I observed that they had a profound conviction that everything would be fine, everything would work out, that the Lord would look after them. And in their mind, that was, the Lord over there, the third party, God, Jesus, whatever. Whereas to us, if there was such a God concept, it's the God within. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So the point was that these people believed completely, totally, and utterly, without a shred of doubt, that things would work out fine for them, and they did. And so they had, using a different model or entry point, had kind of got to that. They had got to that point where they were actually able to trust the process, and things did work out. And I'm thinking of one guy in particular who went from nothing to on our rich list just with a series of ideas that he executed brilliantly. And I know he still is a devout Christian, because I used to work with some friends of his. who were also devout Christians. And it was extraordinary to watch. And there's many people I've known like that. And you probably know some too.
It is. We refer to them as what, lucky, right?
Yes.
Or however, right? Whatever the SAS society, right? We do like to promote, and we write the books on the struggle and effort. People that don't struggle and effort, we sort of discard, and they don't become well-known household names because they're lucky, right? But we want to write books and tell everybody how we struggled and effort. It's almost like the struggle and effort is the price you pay for people to listen to you at times, right? Like your struggle and effort makes your story more valuable to people because they feel they can relate to you, because at some point you were at the top of the mountain and then you were at the bottom and then you climbed your way back. The people that just sort of glide up on the top, right? And we, well, let's just say that people call them out, they're lucky, but in reality, we know that they were just able to be in alignment and to have faith and to trust, and they didn't question, and they were able to see those opportunities, right? And that's the reality of what they did. We call them lucky. In reality, we're not taking advantage of all the same opportunities they have, right? Like I woke up last night and I was like, I should stop working from home and I should get some space in a shared workspace. And then I said, you need to get out, you need to start, and I woke up and I'm like, do I really want to do that? Do I want to go? I mean, everyone's, I like working from home, but I'm like, you need to get out of the house. Like you need to be out. You can't be sitting at your desk 12 hours a day. And I said to myself, is that inspired? So that's the first thing is I'm asking myself that question, which is great. Like, is that an inspired thought? Like, do I just need to go find a shared workspace and go inside there?
That's a fairly big solution to an inclination to not sit at your desk at home for 12 hours a day, because you could just go for a walk around the block. You could go to a movie. you could go to the gym or whatever you do for exercise.
Yep.
You go and have a coffee with your wife or whatever it might be, So there are many things you could do for half an hour or, whatever. So occasionally I use that Pomodoro time technique. You basically set your timer on your phone or whatever for 25 minutes and you devote yourself to a task for 25 minutes and you get right into it and you really go with it. The timer goes off and then you take a break for 5 minutes or whatever, just, clear your mind, make a cup of coffee, get some water or whatever you do, walk around the house. And then you do another 25-minute segment. And I think after 2 or 3, then you take maybe a half-hour break, right? Where you might go and sit outside and admire the view or, the sun, feel the sun warm your soul and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's pretty good because instead of like, oh God, 12 hours of this, it's like, it's only 25 minutes. And then once you get into it, the timer goes off and you think that can't be 25 minutes.
Well, normally in the office, and when I'd spend most of my time talking to people. Now it's you're on Zoom, you're doing whatever. You're still sitting in the chair. You're not up. You're not walking around. So it's different for me in my business. I was always up, meeting and talking, and going to meetings and chatting with people. So now it's for the last 2 years, you've been sitting in my desk in my house doing this, which is interesting. So that's why trying to understand, was that an urge? Is that an urge, or is that a inspired action? And I do love the idea of listening to what is an inspired action, and what's the difference between an urge and an inspired action. And I looked at the urge would be like, well, I got to go, I got to drive, I got to do all this stuff, I got to find, I'm like, I'm like, it's just too much. To your point, getting up, going to the gym, getting out of the house is much easier and a lot more fun. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Understanding the urge versus inspiration thing that you mentioned, that is, how do you tell one from the other? That does take some practice, and it's anybody doing this work often asks that question, especially early on, like, how do I know if it's an urge or an inspiration? And I guess you do get better at it. I can't quite tell you how to do it. Maybe you got some ideas on how you do it. I mean, we know that an urge comes from fear, and we know that an inspiration comes from love, and we know that urges are about negative beliefs, which are basically not constructive or helpful beliefs, and we know that inspiration that comes with love, is a positive, constructive sort of a belief. So yeah, I guess when I feel an inspiration that I know is an inspiration, the idea just pops into my head, and it's come from a good place. But if you get an email and it's a bill for $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever it might be, and you think, oh God, you have that pang as soon as you see that money, and then you think, oh well, I better do this, I better do that. I mean, that's an obvious example of acting in fear, right? When you think, right, okay, I've got to do something. Whereas if you look at it and then reframe it completely, like you think something completely different about receiving that bill. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm getting this abundance thing pretty sorted with the law of attraction, blah, blah, and then you suddenly get that bill in the mail and you freak out a bit, it's like, the universe has sent you a test. It's like, okay, you say you got this abundance thing sorted, right? Yeah, I got it sorted. Okay, well, let me throw this at you. Now let's see how you react. And if you react from a place of love, like, oh yeah, so-and-so sent me a bill. Well, they really did that work for me. It was amazing work. And, I'm very happy to pay it, and I'm delighted to pay it because it's a good thing that we agreed to have this exchange of value. So when you get to the point where those things don't bug you, that you then can see that you're no longer acting in an urge when you have an uncomfortable moment.
It's interesting too. Like, I think cryptocurrency has been that. So I invested in stocks very early on, and some stocks did well, some stocks did bad. And there was a period of time where I did very, very well. And then, I did very, very poorly. And then I had convinced myself I'm just not a good investor, right? Or somebody had said that, well, you need to, work with somebody who's trained, or whatever the conversation was. And there are some basic stocks, literally that, guys, there are whatever, 5% of the stocks are what makes the market go. I'm like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist from the basics. I had just made some poor choices. And it was a long period of time where I just said to myself, man, I didn't even have money to invest. A long period of time where it was just going to kids, private school, whatever, everything was going. And then where crypto came in, it came into the point where I was able to invest, and it went up and down. And the fluctuation was so huge where you could lose six figures like in 2 days. And then it all comes back, but it comes back over 6 months or 12 months, right? And getting to that point where I was like, I saw it drop, I would laugh. Oh my God, where is it today? Oh my God. And just start laughing. And it helped me. And it took a couple of years where I no longer am like, even if I'm checking it all the time, and I maybe check it maybe once every 2 days, right? I enjoy it. It brings life. I don't really care if it's up or down. Like, in the end, I know where it's going to be and I know what the benefit is. So it's funny that you say that, where it's no longer triggering my, like, God darn it, like, oh darsh, like I should have done that, right? I no longer say that. And I had a couple of huge tax bills, like paid them, and and it's funny that I paid them, and the attorney that did the work for me, like, his bill, I was like, oh, you're awesome, just pay that. My neighbor's window, we had a big storm, and something from my backyard flew and crashed through their window, and the guy's like, hey, what are you gonna do about it? I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, I'll pay for this right away. And I'm like, it's gonna be a few grand. It was like 150. I'm like, huh? And I didn't care. I was just like, whatever. It is what it is. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And it minimized, like, everything that I thought was gonna be here is like, boom here. It's boom here. Like, oh, okay. Like, and when I was investing in crypto, I wasn't investing in crypto as a security. It was fun. Like, this is fun. Like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
A whole different approach to, like, a stock, which is, you got to invest in a stock for long-term benefits and your family's well-being, when crypto is like, oh, it's risky.
Yeah.
It's not secure. Don't do it. I'm like, I'm going to do this because it's fun. So it's very interesting in the way you just said that. And if I applied your sort of approach, your explanation of Joshua's approach, it fits perfectly with what sort of how things have gotten better or been more enjoyable and more fulfilling, right? Along those lines. Like, I like the crypto stuff I do now, and I look at it, I laugh and I'm like, it goes up. My wife will look at me. She's like, oh God, how much did we lose today? I'm like, no, we made today. She's like, all right. I'm like, no, we lost yesterday, but we made today. And it's actually like, it's actually funny. Like you're like, I'm like, okay.
It does become a form of entertainment, really, if you can get to that point.
Which is the ultimate, right? Isn't that the ultimate with what we're all
yes,
doing?
It is.
Everything
it
you
is.
do,
where you're not taking it personally and not feeling fear, and you're not feeling threatened. You're not equating a drop in your crypto portfolio as, oh my God, I'm going to be homeless, living on the street. So
100%.
Yeah. So your account of the story of the window getting broken, the next door neighbor's window, that's a very good example of you getting to a point where you think, right, I've got this abundant stuff sorted. And then the universe says, let's test Jerry and just see, has he really got it sorted? And so I'll throw this at you. And it's like, you could have thought, oh my God, it's going to be thousands of dollars. Like, oh no. And you might want to argue it and, call an attorney, insurance company, whatever it might be. Or you can say, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. And yeah, just tell me how much. And then it turns out it wasn't thousands once you passed the test. It turns out, oh, it's a few $100s.
That's a great, and so funny because I went through that. I'm like, oh, is it homeowners? Do I have to get an attorney? What do I have to do? And I'm like, Chris, the guy came over and knocked on our door and was like, he's a fellow New Yorker here in Arizona. He's like, your thing came through my window. And I'm on the phone and I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. Was anybody hurt? The guy's like, no. He's like, okay, I'm on the phone. Can I come over after? And I'm like, what is this guy? I didn't have anything to do with it, but like, I'm fine. And I go out there and my wife and I go over and I'm just like, you know what? I'm so sorry this happened. And I'm so glad no one was hurt. Just send me the bill, whatever it is, I'll take care of it. And my wife's like, well, we should probably call the homeowners, took out I figured it took out like the side of the guy's house, and it ended up being this little thing. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. Right. So it ended up being this little thing. But in my mind, right, in the conversation, to your point, I had it blew up, and then all right, it is what it is. Like, it's okay.
Right. Well,
if somebody would have gotten hurt, I would have felt terrible. By the way,
well,
that would have been a whole different experience.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. So Joshua recounted a very similar episode this week, when you may recall Gary's dog Tucker got hit by a car, and Tucker seemed to be okay. And the woman drove off, but Tucker had some undetected injury and actually died pretty shortly thereafter. And then the woman came back maybe later that day and knocked at the door and said to Gary, oh, I hope your dog's okay, because as far as she was concerned, the dog had walked back inside, so it was fine. And he said, oh no, I'm sorry, the dog's died. And she said, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I need you to know that your dog dented my car and I need you to pay for it. And initially, Gary's like, oh, call the attorney, call the insurance company, fight it. No. So he had that same flash of reaction. And then he's like, oh, I'm very sorry about that. Send me the bill and I'll take care of it. And then that was the last he ever heard from the woman. So he passed the test, and that was just the test, and it had a zero cost.
It's so funny. So my wife had we had tickets this past weekend. We were in Santa Barbara. So we had tickets to, I don't know, it's called like Country Madness, right? I forget what it's called. In Arizona, it was like 1 million people come and go watch 100 different country people. It's called whatever. We had tickets and we ended up going to this other thing. So my wife's like, oh, let me just, I'll try to give them away or I'll sell them, right? And she went online to one of these shared local sites and she said, hey, it's online for whatever. And then the guy said, I want them for, and he named it. It's like she said, they're on sale for 4 tickets for $300. And he's like, I want them for 200. And it was like 7 a.m. and she returned the message at 11 and said to the guy, I still have the 4. Do you want them? And he was like, no, you took way too long. How could you put up the thing? And like, he came at her hard. And my wife was like, and she's like, well, I'm going to respond. And they started, I'm like, and I sat there looking at it going, does she want me to say to her, like, right? Because my response is that you just laugh. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
But she engaged. And I'm like, that's what I used to do. I sat, it was almost like me outside of myself saying to her. And then she finally said, then I just deleted it and said, I don't really need to be a part of this. But, she was still defending herself to me. And I'm like, honey, you did nothing wrong. You offered these great tickets at a fraction of the price. If somebody else is angry, they're angry. Like you offered a great service. Like just, leave it at that. Like awesome. Right. And all these people are aspects of ourselves because we're always questioning, am I doing the right thing? Is this right? Or is this wrong? So these lessons or these were tests, right, that the universe put back are quick lessons for us. And if we pass those lessons, right, then it's on to the next. But if we don't, we get stuck in that lesson. It's on rinse and repeat. We're angry at this. We're angry at that. The person at the grocery store, the line took too long. The gas line was here. Person cut me off, right? But it starts with that one lesson. And that lesson could be a quick summer school. You're in and out in 2 hours. You're in and out in an hour. Or it could be freaking all day. You're in that lesson, right? And that's what I'm sort of getting out of this oneness idea, that everything that we're getting, all of these reactions, right? I had one this morning as well. And I'm looking at it going, okay, why did I react that way? Like, what is this lesson trying to teach me? And within an hour, I'm out of it. When before, like day 5, I'm still, thinking about it and going through it. But I love what you keep, and it is really what and you've been saying it, right? For the, I don't know, we've been doing this now 3 or 4 months. You've been saying it's reframing, right? However you want to, however you want to say it, it's reframing whatever's happening to you, reframing it for you. And then it changes the whole perspective.
Yeah, because if you're the creator of your reality and you've attracted everything to yourself, then it is your creation in the first place. So if you take that oneness approach or that creating approach, then to be critical or angry about something external, you then realize, well, that's an aspect of me, and furthermore, I created it or attracted it. So I'm actually getting annoyed about my own creation. It's like, how dumb is that? It's like, finger, I don't like you. Like, you're here on my hand and you're part of me, but I don't like you, finger. But I love my fingers. And
that's what I'm thinking about, my current position, right? It's like, I know I created this for myself. And if you look at it, I mean, it's really the perfect scenario. It's a great opportunity. The payment as well. I don't get involved in any of the drama. It's a lot of creative and it's a lot of fun, which I do like. And I have none of the side effects, right, of being in office with people that maybe have different ideas when it comes to how to execute a strategy. So there's no conflict. I mean, it's literally a cakewalk. And I still, it's like and even though I created this for me, it's ridiculous how easy it is. And what I mean by easy is like, it's effortless. But yet I don't embrace it fully with both arms. And that's what the question is like, why would I not embrace this? Like, it's fun. It's easy. I'm getting everything I want, the respect, the understanding, right? I get to do the work that I want to do in this field. And I'm like, okay, well, why am I not embracing it with both hands and being like, awesome.
After a few decades of believing that the illusion of physical reality is the end of it, beginning and the end of everything, and everything we've done and every way we've acted until now and everybody around us is all rooted in that concept, that it does take a degree of independent thought and courage and whatnot to actually say, well, what if that's not actually how it all works, and to start to apply a different method. So sometimes it does feel like turning a super tank around, that you start the steering and after a long period of time the thing's going the other way, and it's not an instant process. But then again, we're not ready for that instant transformation. And the few people who do have those kinds of epiphanies, whether it was St. Paul on the road to Damascus or whatever that biblical event was, or that guy Eckhart Tolle, whatever his name is, who was down and out and on a park bench and reached rock bottom and had this sudden and shocking awakening. So Joshua basically says you don't really want to do it that way because that's pretty unpleasant. And so they say you're at the perfect place, you're moving at the right speed, don't try and hurry it up, and take one step at a time. Don't try and, because when you take that first step, you you get an inspiration, you have this idea, you feel the fear, and a lot of us stop at that point. But if you push past the fear and do the thing, you then become a vibrational match to the next inspiration or the next step. But if you're at that first step and you start thinking, but what about step 5 or step 20? They look unattainable and they look scary. And so therefore it's the one step at a time thing, right? Get back into alignment and then wait for the inspiration with the next idea and take that following step. So we're trying to rush it and so on. And we're saying, well, I kind of know this stuff, like I've got it in my mind, I got the intellectual acceptance of it, but it's not actually happening in my life. But the mind gets there and the body and the spirit will follow shortly thereafter.
That was clear. That was very good clarification too. It's the step 1 versus step 20, right? And your mind goes from step 1 to step 20, and that's when the fear sets in. And it is just one step at a time. For me, I think I've said this to you. This is where I am isn't going to be forever. I do see one of the guys imploding on this, but from my aspect, it'll be when it's ready for me. Right? Like, it's still super easy for me. Everything in this situation is super easy for me. Now, as I sit back and what's happening to other people isn't super easy for them, according to what they're saying. And I get that. Right. And I listen, but it's still super easy for me. Right. Everything is very, very easy. And so I'm like, as questioning my fulfillment or my lack of fulfillment is also a very interesting way for me to look at it. I mean, it's not like I have to get up at 4:30 a.m., drive 2 hours, fight traffic, argue, right, sweat, and have bleeding hands to finish whatever I was going to write. None of that. I get up when I want. I get the work done, right? A few great calls a day. It's fun. I get to bring consumer product things to life, and then we get to see them be successful. I'm like, on my own time frame. I'm like, okay, how much easier could you get?
Yeah. We forget that. We also, when Joshua gives examples of abundance and having this supreme confidence that we will be provided for, they give examples like, you don't worry about the oxygen in the air, so you know that you will have plenty of air to breathe and it will be perfect. And there will be water and food and shelter. So those things you think, oh yeah, well, that doesn't prove anything. That's pretty obvious. And then you think about animals. So animals have a degree of confidence about everything being fine for them, excuse me, that humans don't have. And I was just thinking about, most people would say, well, when it comes to money, that's a lot harder. But my partner Trace was telling me that when she lived in Ireland, that there was a billboard, and the billboard said something like, most people, or whatever percentage was, are 2 paychecks away from homelessness. In other words, most people, if they lost 2 paychecks, would actually not be able to pay their rent or their mortgage, and they'd be out. So, and that's probably very true even in the wealthiest countries in the world, that a lot of people, if they lost several paychecks, would really be in trouble financially. So another way to look at that, instead of that fear-based marketing slogan or message, would be, most people are supremely confident that they will always have the next paycheck and the one after, and they don't feel the need to actually put away a whole lot of money and sacrifice spending that money today for putting aside the fear fund, if you like. So you can look at that one both ways, that people are as supremely confident about the ongoing supply of money as they are about the oxygen that we breathe and the water that we drink.
I love that. The fear fund. I'm actually taking the note of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting, because realistically, only a very small number of people have a massive pile of money where working is optional.
Yeah, no, and it's funny, and a lot of times people call them lucky, but they have no idea what they're going through and what they're experiencing, right? I mean,
yeah,
they may be the most unlucky people on the planet, but money isn't one of the things that they need, but they're needing everything else, right? So
yeah, well, happiness is reasonably independent of your money supply.
Yep. Well, I
They
mean, look
get
at
stressed
Tony
if you don't have
Robbins,
enough, but apart from that, it's pretty independent.
right? What Tony Robbins says, he's a personal consultant to what 49 of the 50 wealthiest people on the planet, and all 49 are unhappy. I mean, every butt he's dealt with is worthiness and happiness.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's
interesting.
crazy.
I know when Gary was in that, high income, high net worth set, he said that all his friends were unhappy. And there was within that group, there was a lot of alcohol and substance abuse and infidelity and all that sort of stuff, people looking for meaning, satisfaction, purpose externally. And he also said they were searching for meaning, and the best they could come up with was, well, let's do something for a charity. And that was as far as they could raise. Yeah. So having money, to me, is not a source of unhappiness, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not inherently a source of happiness unless you are happy in your mind anyway. But most people seem to think that, like, somebody just won, by our standards, it's a big lottery. Somebody won 42 million the other day, and was in a little village, and nobody knows who it is, I don't think, and hopefully for their sake nobody ever does. But and I always used to think, how does somebody attract that? But Joshua mentioned something really interesting, which was that there's that common story of somebody wins the lottery and then within a short time they're destitute or broke. It's all turned out pretty badly for them. And they said, so those people are choosing to experience an extreme version around the abundance and lack concept. So they actually are exploring lack, even though it would appear they've just become very abundant. And that's why mostly it doesn't work out for them, because they quickly conclude that this will change my life for the better, and they put a lot of store in that. And of course, they become detached from what really makes them happy and start to define themselves as wealthy people, etc., etc. So that's a whole other exploration, but it's a different approach from the way that you and I might have described that phenomenon previously, which would be, if you didn't make the money and understand the value of money, when you got it, you don't know what to do with it, which is kind of a practical, investment industry approach that I always had. But to actually think about, they managed to attract it because they want to do a deep exploration of lack and abundance, and it may turn to, rubbish for them, but that was the exploration they want. Which drives, that's not really the popular story around the lottery, though, is it? The dream of the lottery.
No, well, because once again, society wants you to invest in the dream, not experience the dream, right? In your reality, the idea is to invest in it, invest in hope, but don't ever diminish that, right? They leave the dream out there. When in reality, for you to have value to somebody else, they want to hear your rock bottom story. Like you have value because of your rock bottom story, because your kids, sued you for money. Like, what? Like, because of those things that you went through, like you have value in society, the way society, you had value no matter what, but you have tremendous value to society because you've gone through stuff and come back from it that 99.9% don't.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is true. I have been through some extraordinary adventures of one kind or another, financial and legal, and
You think?
various others as well, and quite a few of them. And yeah, it is interesting, all of that. I understand that I attracted them and why I attracted them, and I noticed that I no longer attract anything like that whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if you were going to talk about a new concept of money, you would just start with the first 5 chapters being your life, because I think it's super valuable for people. Everybody at some point wants money. You wanted money, I wanted money. Well, we went and got money. Well, then what happened, right? That story is a journey which most people, 90, like I said, there's only 1% of the people make over $250,000. Only 1% make $250,000. $250,000. That's it. $250,000 is 1% of the world. That's not a lot of money, but it is to, I see all these things on Instagram and all over, like, this month you're going to get 10 grand. I'm like, 10 grand a month is not a lot of money. Like, I don't even like, I'm like, what is that going to, I look at this stuff. When I was living in New York, my monthly nut was 25 grand. My monthly nut.
Yeah.
Right. So you've done it, like, in a very big and very spectacular way, right? Driven the cars everybody dreams about, lived in the houses, traveled to the locations everybody dreamed about, right? And then it get to a point where you're like, I'm miserable. I'm so unhappy. And that gets people excited because they don't want you to be happy because they're not happy. And then you hit rock bottom, and then you slowly show them what you were thinking, what you did to climb out, and people going, that's where I am right now. I can do what he did. I can get there. It's the front part. When you start a story, Tony Ryan, I took my private plane here. People turn off. I don't have access to a private plane. I don't fly in a private plane. Why would I want to? When I hear people talk like that, I walk away. When people go, oh my God, I was in the balls of I had nothing. Holy cow, my wife left me, this left me, my kids left me. Like, you look at what that guy, Neil Donald Walsh, the guy who wrote A Conversation with God. I mean, he was home. He went from married with kids to homeless.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about it. By the way, that's why I read it. I'm like, I want to hear how this guy climbed back out.
Yeah.
Right. And you have a beautiful story. I mean, your story it includes people, it includes passion, it includes relationships, right? And it includes questioning yourself and then growing and expanding, right? So it's all those beautiful things together that create a perfect story, right? Because everybody wants to see that you become an underdog. When you take yourself, and I think our society does that, and those people that just glide on that alignment path aren't given enough headspace for us to learn from, because we could learn from those people because they are theoretically trusting the universe, in alignment with the universe. But we want to go find the people that struggled and efforted and failed. And we want to lie next to them in the pit. And we want to understand, you tell me, not the guy that, well, he had it easy, he was just lucky. No, right? Why don't we want that? I think that's why you were given the journey you were given, so that your voice has weight, significant weight, and people want to hear it. Right? I mean, people will absolutely, whatever book you write, your story is going to be included in there. And like, every time we talk and you tell an aspect of your life, I always find it interesting. I'm always like, oh my God, tell me more. That's super interesting.
Wow. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be fun. But that, right. It's kind of funny how the people that we deem lucky, we don't even ask.
Yeah. Well, the progress I've made in, or whatever you want to call it, in the last few years has all been around this work that we're doing, the LOA work, the Joshua work, the bootcamp, and then the Ascension experience. So that is what has actually changed my life and brought back abundance and things I really want and true happiness and all the rest of that. So I was talking with Krista, who, as I mentioned, made the course around drinking with freedom, or whatever she calls that course, but she's also making one around insomnia, which will be interesting. And then she's also going to make one around depression. So she's someone who's, she's only 40 odd or whatever. She has experienced all these things incredibly intently, and various other things as well, like ADHD and so on. And she's actually managed to work her way out of this stuff, which is extraordinary. And now she's creating courses around doing that. And I said to her, well, when my wife died, she had an early dementia and was ill for many years, and I looked after her, and it was incredibly hard. And if anybody's had that journey, they know that the carer of a person with dementia, their mental health is severely at risk. Anyway, I saw something about a grief counselor, so I went to see this guy, and after a bit he said, oh, I don't think you're grieving. He said, I think you're depressed. And I was always Mr. Energy, Mr. Positive, the Energizer Bunny, super optimistic. And it was like, well, that's not possible. But I thought about it and I realized he was right. And I was telling Krista about it, and she said, oh, I'd love to know more about how did you get out of that? Because so many people are like, oh, depression is a clinical thing, and it's and once you're in there, it's there's a lot of victim stuff around that. I know that's a harsh thing to say, and it's not a popular or acceptable thing to say, but essentially I discovered this work, and that's how I got out of it. So not only did I dig myself out of all those other messes with this work, the money, the legal stuff, and all the rest of it, I dug myself out of that depression hole as well.
People don't realize that too, because when you climb the ladder and then you fall down, I did, there's so much that goes on. People have no clue of all of the entanglements that you have to get untangled when you're on the bottom and you have no resources. or you have limited resources, right? When you're on top, you got lots of resources. You can deal with the pain and the suffering to some degree. But when you tumble down, those resources become limited and you have to untangle yourself. And every step of the way is a heavy, heavy weight. And I think victimhood is the perfect way to express that. I've dealt with depression for myself, for my family as well. And it starts with the idea of victimhood. I think that's a very powerful approach to it. There's other things, other aspects to your point. But for me, I agree with you from my perspective, and even from my family member who was involved. Victimhood played a significant role in that.
Yeah, I guess the first thing for me is I accepted the idea that the things I didn't like in my life, that I was responsible for those in some way or other, and I eventually understood how I created those. And then I had more trouble accepting that all the great things that had happened, so-called great things that I felt good about, some of them were great, that I was responsible for those as well. So the first step was, I'm responsible for everything I don't like about my life. The next step was, I'm responsible for everything I do like and have liked. And then the next step is, well, how do I get less of what I don't want and more of what I do want? And why do I seem to waver between, wander between the two all the time? And then we discover, well, that's because you've got wobble in your vibration, in your alignment. So you're in and out of alignment all the time. So you're in the current of fear, the consciousness of fear, and then you're also in the current of love, or the consciousness of love. So when you understand how to be more in the love and creative space and not in the fear space, then you start to make progress. And it sounds simple, but all you need to do is, if you're feeling bad, that your emotional guidance system says you're out of alignment, you're not seeing things the same way as your inner self. If you're feeling good, you're in alignment, you are seeing things the same way as your inner self, and you are raising your vibration. And a good finishing note, your current physical reality is the perfect reflection of your current vibration. And the only way to change the physical reality to something you prefer is that process of raising the vibration.
I love it. That would be like even the opening to your book, right? It's like step one, you got to accept everything. That is such a simple concept, but it is difficult to absolutely embrace. To blame I shouldn't say blame, hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
This was great, Rob. I loved our conversation, and I said today's I always look forward to our Thursday talks.
Yeah. They're Friday talks here. I love them too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Friday. Right. Thursday for me, Friday for you.
Yeah. We're on the leading edge of time zones.
You're in the future. I'm in the past. I like it.
Yeah. Something like that, or not. Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
See you
Thanks
soon.
a lot, Rob.
Thanks, Jerry. Good to see you. Bye.